The ketchup bottle made an obscene squelching sound as I refilled it for the third time today. My husband Marcus always said this was the sound of my life going nowhere. Funny thing about ketchup bottles, you never really see what's inside until someone squeezes them. Same could be said about people. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Table 7 needs more ranch dressing, called out Danny, the teenage busboy who thought he was doing me a favor by being extra nice to the old waitress lady. I'm 32, but I guess when you're wearing a grease-stained apron and your name is stitched in cursive above the pocket, age becomes irrelevant. We all just become part of the furniture. I grabbed the industrial-sized ranch container from the walk-in freezer, my breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Back here, surrounded by cases of lettuce and hanging sides of beef, nobody knew that I owned the freezer, and the lettuce, and the beef, and the building, and the 17 other restaurants scattered across this city like chess pieces on a board only I could see. Before we go further, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. If stories of justice and empowerment speak to you, consider subscribing. It's free and helps our community grow. Now, let's continue. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from Gerald, my attorney. Board meeting confirmed. 3 p.m. Riverside location. He'll be there. Perfect. Marcus thought he was meeting with potential investors for his revolutionary tech startup. What he didn't know was that those investors were my people, and that Riverside restaurant, the one he'd chosen specifically because he said I'd never be able to afford eating there, was mine too. I'd bought it 6 years ago, back when it was a failing seafood shack. Now it was the most exclusive dining spot in the city, with a 6-month waiting list. Emma, your husband's here. The sing-songy voice of Brittany, our hostess, cut through my thoughts. My stomach didn't drop. It never did anymore. I'd had 3 years to perfect this performance. 3 years since I decided to flip the script on my life and see who Marcus really was when he thought I was nobody. I pushed through the swinging kitchen doors, ranch dressing in hand, and there he was. Marcus Chen, in his expensive suit that I'd secretly paid for through a surprise bonus his company gave him. But he wasn't alone. She was blonde. They're always blonde in these stories, aren't they? But this one had a specific look, the kind of polished, empty prettiness that came from having enough money to outsource your personality to a stylist. Her name was Vivian. I knew because I'd approved her hiring at Marcus's firm 3 months ago through my majority stake in his company. Another chess piece, though she didn't know she was playing. Emma! Marcus's voice carried across the half-empty dining room. It was 2 p.m., the dead zone between lunch and dinner. I'd specifically scheduled my shifts during these hours. Fewer witnesses to what I was building. 2 waters, no ice, and make sure the glasses are actually clean this time. Vivian giggled. That specific kind of giggle that said she thought she was better than me. Right away, I said, my voice carrying just the right amount of tired resignation. I'd practiced in the mirror. Too much would be obvious. Too little wouldn't sell it. As I filled their water glasses, I heard Marcus's voice drop to that intimate register he used to use with me. This is what I'm dealing with at home. Can you imagine? 32 years old and still bringing home $200 a week in tips. That's so sad, Vivian cooed. You deserve so much better, baby. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Baby. The word hit me with the force of a butter knife. Dull, annoying, but ultimately harmless. I'd stopped caring about Marcus's affairs after the first one. That was 2 years ago, back when I still thought our marriage might be salvageable. Back before I realized that the man I'd fallen in love with at a community college business class had never actually existed. I'd built my empire quietly, starting with a food truck at 23. While Marcus was failing his way through various entry-level jobs, I was perfecting my grandmother's recipes and learning the brutal mathematics of the restaurant business. One truck became two. Two became a small cafe. The cafe became 3 locations. And then I got smart. Really smart. I stopped putting my name on anything, created a web of LLCs and holding companies, each one layered like the phyllo dough in my best-selling baklava. By the time I was 28, I owned 11 restaurants. When I married Marcus at 29, I owned 15. Now, at 32, I controlled a 22-location empire that generated $37 million in annual revenue. Marcus knew none of this. To him, I was Emma the waitress, Emma the failure, Emma the woman who couldn't quite figure out how to make something of herself. "How's that startup presentation coming along?" I asked sweetly, placing their waters down with deliberate gentleness. Marcus had been working on his pitch deck for months. It was, objectively, terrible. But I'd made sure he got just enough encouragement from industry experts to keep going. Hope makes better kindling than anger. "Not that you'd understand the tech," Marcus said, not even looking up from his phone. "It's pretty sophisticated stuff." The tech was a restaurant management app. The irony was so thick I could serve it with a side of marinara. "I'm sure it is," I said, retreating back to the kitchen before my smile could crack into something real. In the kitchen, I found Tony, the head chef who'd been with me since the food truck days. He was one of 5 people who knew the truth. Tony, my lawyer Gerald, my accountant Susan, my younger sister Rachel, and my grandmother Yaya, whose recipes had started everything. "He's here with the blonde?" Tony asked, not looking up from the risotto he was stirring. "Vivian, from his office." "The one you hired?" "The very same." Tony shook his head. "You're a piece of work, boss." I prefer to think of myself as thorough. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel. "Mom's asking why you're still pretending to be poor." I told her it's performance art. She didn't laugh. I typed back, "Tell her it's almost over. 3 more hours." The truth was, I hadn't started this as some elaborate revenge scheme. I'd hidden my success from Marcus initially because I wanted to see if he'd love me without money. Spoiler alert, he didn't. But by the time I figured that out, I'd discovered something more interesting than love. I'd discovered who people really were when they thought you were beneath them. Marcus had revealed himself slowly, like a photograph developing in chemicals. The casual dismissals. The way he stopped asking about my day. The way he'd redirect conversations at parties when people asked what I did. "She's between things right now," he'd say, as if my life was a long elevator ride stuck between floors. But the restaurants kept growing. I kept hiring, kept expanding, kept winning awards under corporate names that meant nothing to anyone outside the industry. 3 of my establishments had been featured in the Times. One had a Michelin star. Marcus had eaten at that one for his birthday, never knowing I'd comped his meal from the owner's private reserve list. "Order up for 7," Tony called, sliding plates across the pass. I delivered the food with practiced efficiency. Ranch dressing for a family of tourists. Burger medium rare for a regular who always tipped 20%. Salad, dressing on the side, for a woman who came here every Tuesday to read romance novels alone. I loved this part. Not the performance for Marcus, but the actual work, the rhythm of service, the small kindnesses, the way a perfectly timed water refill could change someone's day. I'd never stopped working the floor, even after I could have retired completely. There was truth in this work. Honesty. "Emma," Marcus's voice again. "We're ready to order." I approached their table, notepad ready. Vivian was scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the blue glow. Marcus was leaning back. that specific posture of a man who believed the world should arrange itself around his convenience. "I'll have the ribeye, medium rare, and tell the chef not to skimp on the butter this time," Marcus said. "Vivian?" "Just a salad, dressing on the side." She didn't look up from her phone. "Great choices," I said, writing nothing down. I'd already memorized it. "That'll be right out." As I turned to leave, I heard Marcus say, "See what I mean? No ambition, no drive, just going through the motions." Vivian's response was muffled but sympathetic in tone. I pushed into the kitchen, handed the order to Tony, and checked my watch. 2:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, Marcus's investor meeting would begin at Riverside. In 13 minutes, he'd walk into my flagship restaurant, not recognizing it as mine. He'd see the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, the custom artwork I'd commissioned from local artists, the open kitchen where diners could watch chefs work with ingredients I personally sourced from farms I'd vetted, and he'd meet the investors. My phone buzzed. "Gerald. We're all in place. See you soon, boss." I responded. "On my way." "Tony, I need to run out for an hour." I called into the kitchen. "Big moment?" "The biggest." I untied my apron, revealing the designer dress I'd worn underneath. Another trick I'd learned: layers. Always layers. In the employee bathroom, I quickly touched up my makeup, pulled my hair from its ponytail, and slipped on the heels I'd hidden in my locker. The transformation took 4 minutes. Emma the waitress disappeared. Alexandra Chen, CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group, emerged. I walked past Marcus's table on my way out. He didn't even glance up. Why would he? The woman who'd just taken his order no longer existed, and the woman walking past in Louboutins wasn't anyone he'd ever think to connect with his wife. The drive to Riverside took 8 minutes. I'd timed it. I pulled into the private parking spot marked "Reserved Owner" and sat for a moment, feeling the weight of what came next. This wasn't about humiliation. Not really. It was about clarity. About truth. About showing Marcus who he'd married, yes, but more importantly, showing him who he'd become. I'd given him 3 years to see me, really see me. 3 years of opportunities to ask questions, to wonder why I never seemed stressed about money, to notice that the tip money I brought home never quite matched our lifestyle. 3 years to love me without needing me to be small. He'd failed every test. Inside Riverside, my head chef Marcus, yes, I'd hired a head chef named Marcus specifically for this moment because I have a sense of humor, greeted me at the door. "Everything ready?" I asked. "Conference room is set. Board members arrived 10 minutes ago. Your husband just pulled up." "Perfect. Let's begin." The conference room at Riverside was my favorite in the entire portfolio. Glass walls overlooking the water. A custom table made from reclaimed wood from the city's original dock. Art that told a story of building something from nothing. My board members were already seated. Gerald, my attorney. Susan, my accountant. David Park, who ran operations. Maria Rodriguez, my marketing genius. And at the head of the table, an empty chair. Mine. I took my position standing, not sitting. I wanted to be on my feet for this. Marcus entered at 3:01 p.m., Vivian clicking along behind him on heels too high for confidence. His eyes scanned the room, probably trying to figure out who was most important, who he should charm first. He didn't recognize anyone. Why would he? These were my people. I'd kept every part of my professional life quarantined from him like a viral infection. "Mr. Chen," Gerald stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." "Absolutely," Marcus said, his voice taking on that false heartiness men use when they're trying to seem bigger than they are. "I'm excited to present my app to you all. I think you'll find it revolutionary for the restaurant industry." "I'm sure we will," Gerald said smoothly. "But first, there's someone we'd like you to meet." the person who actually requested this meeting. This was my cue. I stepped forward from where I'd been standing slightly behind the board members, deliberately in Marcus's blind spot. "Hello, Marcus." The color drained from his face in stages. First confusion, then recognition, then something that might have been fear. "Emma? What are you doing here?" "Working," I said simply. "Everyone, this is my husband, Marcus Chen. Marcus, this is my board of directors." The silence in the room had texture. You could have carved it, served it, charged $30 a plate. "I don't understand," Marcus said, his voice smaller now. "Let me help you," I said, moving to stand at the head of the table. "I'm Alexandra Emma Chen. I've been going by my middle name with you, but professionally I use my first name and maiden name. I'm the founder and CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group. We own and operate 22 restaurants across this city, including Riverside, where we're standing, and Denny's downtown, where you just had water. No ice. With Vivian." Vivian made a small sound, like a balloon slowly deflating. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "Susan, can you pull up the financials?" I said calmly. Susan tapped her laptop, and the screen behind me lit up with numbers. Revenue, profit margins, asset valuations, 3 years of explosive growth, all documented in spreadsheets and graphs. "We did 37 million in revenue last year," I continued, "projected to hit 52 million this year. I started with my grandmother's recipes and a food truck 12 years ago. Built it piece by piece while you were, let's see, what was it?" I pretended to think. "Failing at pharmaceutical sales, then getting fired from that marketing position, then spending 6 months finding yourself in our apartment that I paid for?" "Emma?" "Alexandra," I corrected gently. "And before you ask, yes, I paid for everything. The apartment, the car you drive, the clothes you're wearing. That watch? I had Gerald buy it for you last Christmas and present it as a company bonus from that firm you work at." "What firm I work at?" Marcus looked like he might be sick. "The firm where I'm the majority shareholder," I said. 53% to be precise. Acquired it 2 years ago through one of my holding companies. It was a good investment. Steady returns. Though I have to say, the VP of sales position, your position, hasn't been performing as well as I'd hoped." I let that sink in for a moment. "I hired Vivian 3 months ago," I continued. "Excellent credentials. MBA from Cornell. I thought she'd be a good fit for the team. Didn't realize she'd be fitting quite so personally with my husband, but that's been an interesting side development." Vivian found her voice. "I didn't know he was married." "He's wearing a ring," I pointed out. "He said it was from a previous relationship, that it was complicated." I almost laughed. "Well, he got the complicated part right." Marcus finally seemed to find his footing. "Anger, the refuge of the exposed. So what is this? Some sick game? You've been lying to me for years?" "No," I said, my voice hardening. "I've been waiting. Waiting to see if you'd love me without money. Waiting to see if you'd respect me without a title. Waiting to see if the man I married at a community college, the one who said he loved my grandmother's cooking and my dreams, was real or just a performance. This is insane. What's insane is that I gave you 3 years to ask questions, 3 years to wonder how we afforded things on your salary and my supposed tips. 3 years to notice that I left for waitressing shifts during off-peak hours. 3 years to see me, Marcus, really see me." I pulled out a folder from my briefcase. "These are divorce papers. Already filed. Already processed. We had a prenuptial agreement, remember? The one you barely read because you assumed I had nothing to protect? Turns out it was protecting quite a lot. You can't do this. I already have." I slid the papers across the table. You'll find the settlement very fair. Too fair, according to Gerald. You get the apartment. It's paid off. The car, also paid off, and a one-time payment of $200,000. That's more than generous considering you brought nothing into this marriage and have spent the last 3 years mocking the woman who financed your entire life. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Everyone will know about this. I'll tell everyone what kind of person you are. Please do, I said calmly. Tell them how your wife built a restaurant empire while you thought she was a failure. Tell them how she hired you, paid for your life, and gave you every opportunity to love her without conditions. I'm sure that'll go great for you. He grabbed the papers and stormed out. Vivian hesitated, looking between me and the door. You're not fired, I told her. You're actually very good at your job. But you might want to update your relationship status. And next time, verify the ring story. She left quickly, heels clicking a rapid retreat. The room exhaled collectively. Well, David said, that was dramatic. It needed to be, I replied, sinking into my chair finally. He wouldn't have believed anything less. Gerald leaned forward. You okay, boss? I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. Now, let's talk about the new location. I'm thinking Italian, something with my grandmother's recipes but elevated, a place where people can see the truth of good food, good work, and good character. As my board launched into discussion, I looked out the window at the water. Somewhere out there, Marcus was processing the last 3 years of his life, realizing that every assumption he'd made was wrong. Every superiority he'd felt was built on my foundation. I didn't hate him. That was the surprising part. I just didn't need him anymore. Didn't need him to validate me, to see me, to understand what I'd built. The ketchup bottle had been squeezed, and finally, everyone could see what was really inside. My phone buzzed. A text from my grandmother. Rachel told me, when do I get to say I told you so? I smiled and typed back. Come to Riverside tonight, dinner's on me. Everything's always been on me. She sent back a single emoji. The crown. Perfect. The meeting continued around me, plans and projections and possibilities. Tomorrow I'd go back to working the floor at Denny's downtown. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because there was honesty in that work. Truth in the simple act of service. But I'd do it as myself this time. Fully myself. Alexandra Emma Chen, the woman who built an empire from a food truck and a dream. The woman who learned that sometimes the smallest position gives you the clearest view of who people really are. And what I'd learned about Marcus Chen? He was exactly who he'd shown himself to be. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. The ketchup bottle had been squeezed, and it was empty. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.